I released a pretty cool program yesterday, and I'm gonna show it off to you. So it's called Indeed. Let's imagine a situation where, first of all, we are not in a private repo that I don't want to show you. Funny. It's kind of funny streaming because you start seeing things that, oh, right, this is private. Usually, like when you use your computer, it's not something you consider because nobody is gonna see. But when you're streaming, suddenly that is a thing. Let's go to some, yeah, binaries go works well. So this is my binaries repo. Pretty sure it's private, but for a silly reason. It just contains a bunch of compiled binaries of my programs and the symlink to chart tracker. And symlinks being pushed to GitHub won't actually do anything of like usability. I'm pretty sure you'll have to recreate the symlink anyway. So let me actually go to the start of why this is even a symlink. Chart tracker is unfortunately written in C#, and while you can attach the runtime to compile in a single file, it ends up being entirely too huge. So what I do instead is not like attach the runtime and all that. So I instead just make a symlink to the binary in the project, which has all its contexts that it needs. So here we just have this symlink that I don't want to push. Everything else I do. And the way you would do that is by editing gitignore. You would do something like neovim, gitignore, you go here, it's already there, boom. So this process has always annoyed me incredibly. A lot of other things in Git are actually super fine, and I like how they work. They're pretty easy to do, especially with the other tools that I already have for them. But Git ignoring has always been incredibly annoying. Let's start with this. We want to open a file in neovim. For most files, you either type in a letter, maybe two, and then you can autocomplete, or tab autocomplete, right? The thing about pressing tab, at least in fish shell, but it should be like in every reasonable shell. So we have like for all barrel there, right? It doesn't start with Bob, but it will autocomplete. On WSL, using tab to autocomplete is a bit slow, where I've gotten used to not pressing tab, but on real Linux, like on real hardware, it's really not an issue. Like tab does everything like super fast, where it's a great feature. Alright, if you look at all of the files here, none of them have IT inside of them, like two letters I and T, right? So the only ones that do is git and gitignore. Okay, that sounds good. Let's do IT tab. And why did that happen? Obviously, either git or gitignore fit better to this, don't you think? Yes, they do, and they would be autocompleted if they didn't fucking start with a dot. Because they do start with a dot, they are basically ignored files, and pressing tab ignores them as well. Now, in defense, I'm not even sure of what. There's probably a setting to change this, but I don't know what it is. And the issue I'm fixing here just kind of is a part of a bigger issue I have with editing gitignore that we're gonna get to. So even if there is a setting, it wouldn't like fully make it okay for me. So in other words, we have to press the dot, like type the dot, and then G. Okay, that's like easy enough as well, right? No worries. Press tab. Whoops, now you have to choose, and you want to be pressing tab when you don't need to choose, so it just auto completes to the thing that you want and you can go on. But anytime extra input is required from you, it kind of stops you in your tracks. Like maybe not streaming would stop me as well. So that's why I'm checking. So I press tab and now I'm like, oop. It kind of stops me, you know? Now I have to choose. I have to process this new information that just got to me, like, git or git ignore. So to get to git ignore, I would have to press tab 2 more times. And then, now this is not actually required, but I feel like it is. It just feels that way, that I need to do something to remove that input request window. I don't need to do that, by the way. Like, it's not really a solid argument, it just kind of feels bleh. So that's why I have to like press backspace or space or something. Now I have to kind of decide what else do I have to press to remove that, I guess, annoying window. So I need to type in .g and then press tab 3 times and then something else. I don't even have a habit of what exactly I'm going to press to remove that window, but I do have the desire to do so. So it's a really long process for something that is usually like way faster. Boom, I'm done, you know? All right, we have a different solution then. So we don't have to press tab 3 times, but instead 1, we could do gitty. Okay, that's much better. But now I'm typing 5 characters for a file that should be accessible really easily. And that is why I created IGNV, which is just a fish abbreviation for this exact command. And I used this as a solution for some time. It like works well enough where I simplify getting to git ignore and make it so it's not, I guess, chance dependent. Because what if, for some odd reason, you have another folder called git ASDF or something? Now the amount of tab you need to press would possibly change, which is not a good thing. But let's get to the core of the issue. Why am I even opening git ignore in NeoVim? Is it to edit the file? That's true in concept, but in reality, why I'm opening git ignore is to make sure something is git ignored. So I open git ignore. What did I want to accomplish by this action? I wanted to make sure that short tracker is included in the git ignore file. That's all I wanted to do. I didn't want to like type stuff in the editor. I didn't want to edit the file. I just wanted to make sure something is in there. Okay, what we can use is probably something like grep or rg, which is just grep written in Rust and faster and all that. Used by VS Code, by the way. Like, it's so considerably fast that it's used over grep in VS Code, which is really cool. Okay, well, we can rg short tracker. Oh, I didn't specify the file. That's just a skill issue. I think file first, pattern later, git ignore. Okay. Well, it sounds like a point I'm trying to make here as well, but it's a, oh, pattern first, path later, okay. That sounds like a point I'm trying to make here as well, but no, it's not. It's just a skill issue, and by all accounts, it, like, if you get used to using RG, you will know where to put what, so it's not really an issue. Okay, it is there. But what if it wasn't? Then you realize that, oh, it's not in gitignore, and you still fucking have to go and open the file. I didn't have to press space there, by the way. Let me just go back here. I can just IGNV and enter, and it does the exact same thing. And now I have to type it in anyway, so I would have typed it twice depending on the situation, like twice or once. In other words, it's still like better to just open gitignore and newvim, and us searching for if it's there or not doesn't really help. Okay, let's go one step further. What if we make some sort of function, like fish function, that first checks if a certain string is in gitignore, and if it isn't, we do echo that string, and we append. This is the symbol to append to a file, gitignore. Okay, this is starting to be something, but it introduces an issue that is super annoying and can fuck you up without even you knowing about it. And it is new lines. For what append would currently do, the command that we just typed out in the terminal, right? What it would do is just that string, because there's no new line here that would put that string on a new line. So you end up with this, breaking our short tracker thing and not adding that string correctly. In other words, we now have to make sure that gitignore files end with a new line. That way, when we append, we get that string here correctly. So it's an extra thing that we need to make sure now. Okay, there is a way we could do something like this. We can cat gitignore, and we set that to a variable to see what is inside. We then trim -r, and then there's some way to make it oh, string trim, my bad, sorry. String trim -r for from the right. I think you specify somehow that you want to trim new lines, and once you have trimmed them, you do rg, and like imagine that all of this is in a function. You do rg, and then if not rg, then we also echo append, right? But we start with a new line, that string, and we append that to gitignore, except \n I don't think would be interpreted as a new line, so we do printf, and that should be it. And that kind of would be the idea of the function. However, at this point, I'm kind of stretching what I'm doing a bit too much. In terms of fish, this is very doable in fish, but there are some things here and there that would make this kind of operation a bit more limited. Because what if I wanted to check for multiple strings? What if I want to make sure that both short tracker and, let's say, temp are in the gitignore? I would have to execute the command twice. That's not that big of a deal, but I would rather just be able to specify multiple strings on a single command. Well, now I can. With my program called Indeed, you specify the file, and then simply strings that you want to be in that file on their own lines. Let's do ASDF and FSDA. and also git ignore. Something happened. Let's ign c to cat the contents of git ignore. We see that it had git ignore as before. It had short tracker, but it did not have these lines, and you can see it through this symbol that there's no new line at the end. So what Indeed does, it makes sure that your strings are in the file on their own lines. We specified short tracker and git ignore, but since they were already there, they didn't get added again, which is really nice. We also specified ASDF and FDSA, and since they weren't in the file, they got added. And this is super nice because, well, this is a way for you to make sure that things are git ignored. Let's do IGNV to remove these because I don't actually need them. And let's go to some of my functions in release. I have rust init. So rust init is my fish function that sets up the main structure of a new Rust project. I have a file called release notes that I type, well, release notes in, and this file is then used as the description of the tag and the release. And what I want to do is make sure that release notes are git ignored. Now, truthfully, I could just actually, let's just show it. I could just echo release notes .text into .gitignore, because this function is made to be executed as you create a project, so you probably didn't already add release notes to your project. However, what I just typed out is actually a mistake, which can easily be missed. The thing is, when you do cargo init, it already makes a gitignore file, which includes target, which is for all of your binaries and stuff, which you don't want to commit. So you would have to append. Okay, well, let's say that you remembered to append instead of overwrite. That's the difference, by the way. I didn't know it for the longest time. Yeah, so this is fine, right? But do you remember? In the gitignore file that is made by cargo init, is there a new line at the end or not? I don't know. I think there is. I'm not sure though. And that's kind of the issue. I can't really trust it. And anytime I make a new type of project initialization function, I have to go and check whether I need to append release notes or release notes with a new line, because truthfully I don't know. And worse yet, I am bound to forget to check that once, and I'll do something along the lines of committing target. Well, with Indeed, that is not something you have to worry about. First of all, Indeed will create the file if it doesn't exist. So similar to how appending and overriding would, which is really nice. And it will automatically trim final new lines if it does add something. So if release notes somehow magically was already in gitignore, it will not trim final new lines because it doesn't need to. But once it understands that, yeah, I need to add something to here, it trims final new lines so you don't have to worry about them. And in a similar fashion, you can specify multiple things here in one command. That's a bit less important when this is just a function that you run. And the way you would do that is just rust init. So you don't need to actually type out commands, but it's still pretty nice to be able to do this kind of way, where you just specify things that you want to be get ignored. Because sure, a lot of things that you want to get ignored, you already know that you do at the start of the project, but you might be adding some stuff here and there that you want to get ignored, and now you have a very easy way of doing so. You just indeed get ignore, and then you type out things with spaces in between that you don't want to commit. So this is already nice, but typing indeed get ignore runs into the issue that I complained at the start of the stream. The fact that the file get ignore is hard to autocomplete, which is why I made a fish abbreviation specifically for using indeed. It is IGN, I press space, and all of that is typed out. I can now do the actual things that I want to do. What I love most about this is that I can just execute this command without having to worry about it. Like, I just want to make sure that short tracker is there, and you can see here that, yep, it is indeed there because it returned a non-zero exit code. The idea of the program is to make sure that certain strings are in a file on their own lines. And the reason why this doesn't print an error message is because it succeeds whether or not it added something. It still did ensure that this is in the file. So this is technically a success. And if it wrote that to the file, it still ensured that it is in the file. So whether or not it actually writes, it still does what you want. Which is why in this kind of general case, or rather common case I should say, that's why it doesn't return an error code. And I made my code look ridiculous. You can go and look. I'll give you a link and we'll get to all of that. I made the code look ridiculous to be able to accomplish this kind of feature, returning a non-zero exit code without printing an error message. Because let's say that you don't have this kind of symbol in your shell prompt. That's actually fine. It doesn't really matter whether you see this or not, because your objective still got completed. You ensured that short tracker is in the file. You can go on and do your things. What actually happens to the file matters less, because it is now what you want it to be, whether or not it used to be or not. The reason I return an exit code at all, like a non-zero exit code in this case, is so you can use indeed with something like this. Basically, if you did add something, do some sort of like get ignore formatting. Maybe you have some certain program that formats your get ignore files some specific way. Who knows? I don't fucking know. Or maybe there's something you need to explicitly run after you update your get ignore. And thanks to this exit code, you can chain that command with double ampersands, meaning that if this was a successful arrow code, exit code, then execute this. So if we do echo hi, we will not see hi because it failed by technicality, meaning that it was already there, so we don't need to execute this command. Yeah, and I find this super nice. We can look at the help page. It's actually very short, almost fully fits on a single screen. It would if I didn't have the chat at the bottom. You can pause and read if you want to, but it's mostly what I already explained. Yeah, it's like very simple. And I'm using Clap, the library for arc parsing here, because it's just kind of, I guess, nice to be able to see the explanation at the top and still know where to put the strings and where to put the path. It's a very simple program, so it doesn't necessarily need all this jazz, but it actually will in the future, because I'll add an extra feature, an opt-in feature, where it will not only count exact matches, but substrings as well. And then add or not add your strings depending on your input. Alright, let's actually get to GitHub. I probably shouldn't have replaced it. Well, okay. To go look at the repository. Boom, I never actually, yeah, I never make descriptions for my GitHub projects. I probably should. There is GitHub repo edit, and we'll go back to that so I can show that off to you. Yeah, it like has a README and explains all the details about the project. So, oops. Let's go back. It wasn't my intention. Boom. You can go and look at the project. Yeah. And now, with my nice Rust GitHub action that I showed off, I think on the last or the one before it stream, thanks to that, you can now not only install it with cargo install, and this will compile it from source, but you can now cargo bin install or cargo quick install, indeed, and that will just grab the binary from a release, making installing a program really, really quick. So you can very easily, like if you have cargo installed, you can install it in like maybe 5 seconds, then try it out, and then you can just as easily uninstall it if you want to. It's like, it's so free now to try out programs rather than having to compile them, which is usually the case. So yeah. Yeah. So about that cargo, no, GitHub repo edit. Let's go look at this, because I'm pretty sure you can use the GitHub CLI to edit a description of a, what's it called? Repo, right. Let's go look in the help. What? Let's try again? What's more ridiculous is that it gives that message on help. That should be local. Why does that require internet? That's ridiculous. Okay. Because I have ligatures, this looks super weird. But this is supposed to be this. Interesting. Huh, I didn't know, but I guess it makes sense that if you make a repo private, you will lose the stars. It's like super fair, but you know? I could do something devilish and could just private my lib-v2 repo, which would legit be just villainous. There are 20 stars on it. It's my like HK project, which I haven't been using because I'm on Linux. And it makes me kind of sad because I have so much more stars on a project that I no longer care about, and I have way fewer stars on projects that I actually do. And it's like, and then another 20 stars on my dot files, which I feel fine about because I do work a lot on my dot files. The repo isn't incredibly organized. I've seen better organized repos, but it's fine for the most part, so those 20 stars are like more deserved, I guess. The nice thing about the GitHub CLI, so we have this repository argument, right? The nice thing about it, let's open another tab, we can gh repo edit or any GitHub CLI command that expects a repository whatsoever. So what I can type in is Axel Fubler, so my name, and then the name of the project. But I could also just paste the link to it on GitHub. I can use both depending on what's more convenient to me. I always found that very, very nice. Okay, let's go look at those. Oh yeah, we can dash D or dash description to change the description. Oops. That's pretty nice. So we can gh repo edit description, and let's go actually to the cargo.toml because it has the description there. I wonder, all right, I'm in visual mode. Yeah, I want it to be there. Just kind of weird. What? Kind of weird that it understood me immediately. Boom, let's copy this. And at this point you might be asking, well, doesn't it make more sense to do it on the website since you're already there? Maybe, but it would be more of this or more of this, which is fine for the most part, but I would rather do this in the terminal. And generally, I would also not be looking at the project on a website. Let's paste this in, copy this and delete so we can execute it later. To show off what I mean by I wouldn't be looking at the website, you can do GitHub repo list, which turns into this command, which lists all of your GitHub repos. Let's look at this, go to the top, and we have indeed, and we can see that it has no description. Boom. So it has no description here. And I would see this and be like, oh, yeah, indeed, this should have a description. That's how I would usually figure this out. And I probably should add descriptions to like all of this stuff. Maybe my project will attract more attention this way, who knows. Alright, let's paste the command. We GitHub repo edit -d, add strings to a file on their own lines if they aren't already there. Boom. We edited the repository. Let's go back to Indeed, and now it should have, maybe we need to reload. Huh. Is about and description? No, it should appear there. Majestic. Maybe it like takes more time than I think. Other GitHub CLI actions are way faster. They like get reflected immediately. Interesting. Okay, let's do repo list again and look. Oh, wait, hold up. I think I did a description of the wrong, yeah. I did it of binaries. Okay, yeah, of course. So if you don't actually provide the repo, it will edit description of the current repo, which is a nice feature, absolutely. I just kind of forgot. So let's change inside, oh, right, that wouldn't work. Let's do it here. Can I like remove the description by specifying an empty string? Seems that way. Okay, let's open this in a new tab so we can go look. Actually, I can just do this, right? And now it doesn't have a description. Okay, yeah, it works like I thought it would. Okay, let's go to repo edit, but now edit, and now we specify Axel Fulbler, Indeed. Boom. We specified the repo -d. Boom. So now when we go look, we'll see that it will have a description, and on the website too, once we reload. Yep. It's pretty nice. Yeah, I should definitely add descriptions to my projects. So let me actually add this to my to-do list. Add descriptions to GitHub projects. Yeah, pretty cool how easily you can edit a description. But we can also GitHub repo create. Oh, I make myself decide. Yeah, I make myself decide whether it's public or not, and so on. Let's go look at the help. I imagine you can, yeah. You can also specify the description as well. Interesting. Flags go after the name. Okay. I'm looking at all of this so I can add it to Anki as, let's actually do this for a reason you'll see in literally a second. Boom. With the quarter layout in Bismuth and Cronkite, the fourth window appears in the bottom left rather than in the bottom right, splitting the screen like in 3 windows. Okay, where would we add this? We would add this to shell because it is a shell command that I want to remember. And for type, note type, we do type, makes sense. So we actually type out the command. I find that it makes a lot of sense for things like this. So how to edit description, how to edit description of a GitHub repo. we do GitHub repo edit -d description. How should I make this card? The idea, I want to ensure that it's obvious that it will edit the description of the current one if you don't specify something, and I also want to make it clear that you can specify things. Okay, oops. How to edit description of the, why are you screaming? The current GitHub repo. How to edit description of the current GitHub repo? Does this work? Yeah, I think so. I think so. Oops. And this is indeed that. We add it. How to edit description of a specified, to make sure that these questions are different enough from themselves. Just realized that I'm really glad that this doesn't actually display the answers because Lamau. Yes, I can't for the life of me remember the pins of my bank cards, so I added them as Anki cards. Okay, how to edit description of a specified GitHub repo. gh repo edit repo -d description. I could make it more specific by saying Axel Phobler repo because, well, yeah, but I don't think I need to. I kind of am already used to this being the case, and it's possible that I might be changing the description of like a company's repo, which I have write access to, so stuff like that. So we just gh repo edit repo -d description. Okay, how to create a GitHub repo with a description. We do GitHub repo create name -d description. And the reason it's name here and repo there is because we're creating something and we are naming it as well. While in that other situation, we're referring to a repo that already exists. So that's why it's not name but repo, because name of what exactly? Name of the repo basically, and it's not exactly the name of the repo, it is the path to the repo, because you would have to specify usually your own username, but here you don't actually need to, just specify the name without your username, so that's why it's name. Boom. I want to show off more of my Rust related functions in Fish. Let's actually look into Rust init a bit more. So the way that I would make a Rust project, first of all I go to Rust, I have all of my Rust projects here. I would do gh repo create clone public MIT. I know that's a lot. Let's call it fucking ASDF. And now I know that I can do description, and I specify my description if I already know what the program is going to be doing, which is probably true. And then once that executes, I will have a new folder or directory in here to which I will go. Let's go to Clorange for this example. So I went to Clorange, and this is now an empty repo, but with Git there. So do cargo init to add the main.rs, cargo.toml, and all that stuff. Then we create the README file, even though right now it's going to stay blank. This is useful for a step that we're going to do after. Then we touch release notes, which are also going to be empty, and make sure that they are git ignored. Then we do Rust CI, and let's go and figure out what that is. Rust CI, essentially what it does, it makes sure that the GitHub workflows directory exists and puts my Rust GitHub action into the project and names the binary thing there correctly. Let's actually go look. Let's do Rust YAML. Here it expects essentially the name of your project. So I use SD to automatically replace it there. And then I commit all of those changes as the first commit. Boom, I have my starter project that I can work on. Alright, truthfully I'm tired. I might go back to go explain my other nice functions, but in case you're interested yourself, you can gglf, boom, you can go look at those. A bunch of like nice functions to do common release related actions with Rust projects. So if you enjoyed this stream, the VOD, the whatever, thank you for watching.